I honestly don't think a lot of people get it. I keep seeing people talk about how next year's gonna be a war between 4th gen groups. People say that it's gonna be huge, like the battles between BTS and EXO or Blackpink and TWICE, but I think that's a little bit of an understatement. It's not just gonna be 2 groups fighting, not even 3, not 4, not 5. So you can't really call it a war because most wars are fought between 3 or 4 parties at max. Yeah, no, it's gonna be more than that. Next year, 2022, it's gonna be a full-on free-for-all. And yeah, there's gonna be blood. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we'll be talking about the absolute chaos that will be K-pop in 2022. I've seen a lot of people talk about the supposed 4th gen war that's gonna be happening next year, and I thought it'd be fun to talk about it a little bit more in depth. I mean, we all know next year's gonna be crazy, but it's sort of difficult to pinpoint why. This is all, of course, just my opinion on it and my take. If you have your own, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. But for me, I want to talk about why the sense of competition in K-pop has really intensified recently, and share some personal experiences on how everything just gets so hectic at times. I know this intro has been super long, I'm sorry for keeping you waiting, but without further ado, let's talk about how every single company nowadays has so much money, where it seems like every single group is debuting or coming back with some innovative and game-changing concept or gimmick that's never been seen before, and how it's sort of overwhelming and impossible to keep up with for the normal K-pop stan. Also, just a side note, a lot of people are saying that we're entering 5th gen and that all of the groups that debut next year are going to be under that category. I'm not here to argue about that, that's not what this video is about, and if you're one of those people, then what I'll be talking about today is the 4th/5th gen war. It includes both categories anyway. So one thing I haven't seen anybody talk about is how the gap in budget between these new groups seems to be vanishing more and more every single year. And it's a little bit jarring how almost every single music video that's being released nowadays is super high quality and you can't really tell the difference between the companies. We all know about the big 3 companies, and even though the privilege still exists today within them, in the past it was a lot more apparent. If you think about 2nd gen and early 3rd gen music videos, the only ones that still hold up nowadays and have the longevity are from the big 3. With an exception here and there, everything from the camera quality to the transitions to the sets themselves were just on another level when you compared them to basically anyone else. But now, in the year 2021 going into 2022, every company has money, and now there are so many of them too. As K-pop became a more popular and successful industry, more companies were able to make a profit and spend more money on their music videos. So now, it's difficult to tell which groups come from the big 3 and which ones don't because they all have such a high budget. And next year, that gap's gonna get even smaller, and it honestly might just be invisible. Thinking about the upcoming groups to look out for, there is much more to be worried about than just the big 3. We have I.V, Kepler, the 3 groups High B is gonna debut next year, Everglow's brother group, the list just goes on, and I can tell you right now, it's gonna be a bloodbath. I mean, have you seen IVE's introductory video? Just bleeding money. For those who don't know, IVE is Starship's upcoming girl group, and they probably have the most expensive looking content I've seen so far in 4th gen. You can definitely disagree with me, I mean, aespa's right there, but that's not the point that I'm trying to make. What I'm saying is that with each new prominent group that debuts, the bar for the budget just gets raised even higher. And I don't know if the cycle is ever gonna stop. Every single company is gonna be trying to one-up each other with their musical quality and their music videos. And with all these new groups popping up out of thin air, it's gonna get brutal. In the past, there truly was not that much competition. You would have 2 or 3 companies alternating between having group comebacks. And once in a while, one of the smaller companies would have a breakout hit. But now, you can't go a week without some prominent group having a comeback. Even during July, when the Olympics shut down all the music shows, we still had SF9, Dreamcatcher, Akmu, Soyeon. There's never a moment where a K-pop group isn't having a comeback. And with this increased saturation of new music and content to consume, the sense of competition it's created has been overwhelming. One example of a group that has been royally screwed over by this competition is ONEUS. In their 3rd, going on 4th year as an active group, ONEUS are in the top 20 when it comes to 4th gen group digital music sales. They have really solid physical sales too, and yet they don't have their first win. Most of us know who ONEUS are. They're a prominent and relevant 4th gen boy group, and you would expect them to have a first win by now coming from the same company as Mamamoo. And yet, here they are in their 7th comeback, and once again, it seems like they're gonna get screwed over because a more famous group decided to have a comeback at the same time. This happens all the time. It happens to so many K-pop groups, and not only does it create tensions between these companies, it creates more conflict between the fandoms. People talk about how K-pop is getting increasingly toxic, and I just have this to say. It's gonna get worse. Groups that haven't even debuted yet already have huge fandoms, and they're gonna be fighting for these rookie awards. We've seen how the number of albums that these groups are selling have just increased over the years, and considering ENHYPEN are already million sellers, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a group debut with 1 million sales in 2022. Of course, if that happens, it's gonna be a group under the big 3 or HYBE, but still, that's insanity, and it doesn't even seem that unrealistic. Competition in K-pop has always been a thing, and as the industry gets more saturated, so does the sense of competition and the animosity that these fandoms feel for each other. The most basic topic we can use to talk about this is music shows. Each music show only gives out 1 award a week to whichever eligible artist the best that week, according to their criteria. Even though these K-pop artists and groups aren't trying to prevent each other from getting music show wins, they're all trying to further their own career and be successful. And it's only natural that these group fandoms gain animosity towards other artists when they prevent their faves from getting a music show win. You can say it's petty and immature because it is, but the K-pop industry quite literally is pulling this reaction out of the people who consume their content. Music show wins give K-pop artists more opportunities in the industry, and we've seen how artists with relatively stable fandoms have been negatively affected when they haven't been able to get one. I'm not saying that it's wrong or right for fandoms to get so involved with their artists that they get upset when they don't get an award, but the people who do are always going to exist, and the amount of them is just going to increase in the upcoming years. It's looking like Kep1er and I.V are going to debut around the same time, and if they have to compete against each other for music show wins, it's not gonna be pretty. I know some people say that they think K-pop stans will mellow out over the years, but I think it's just gonna get worse. More K-pop groups are debuting, and that means more of them are gonna get robbed of music show wins. Every fandom's gonna get upset at some point or another, and if they're not, some other fandom is gonna get upset at them. There's just so much anger in and between K-pop fandoms, it almost feels political, and it's just gonna get more complicated, confusing, and messy. The last thing that I want to briefly touch on is the increasing size of girl group fandoms. In the past, girl groups didn't really have much of a fandom. Groups like Sistar and I.O.I would rely on their public recognition and digital sales to get them music show wins, and it would be the boy groups that would rely on people buying their physical albums to get them money. But as K-pop has gotten more global, girl group fandoms have noticeably increased in size, and their album sales are just going up and up. To be honest, I'm a little scared of what's going to happen because of it in the upcoming years. Girl groups still lead in digital sales. Something about them must just be more friendly to the general public, and with all of these new girl groups debuting, I would say more girl groups debut than boy groups nowadays. It's inevitable that girl group fandoms are going to have to start fighting in physical sales too. That's scary to think about. And it's also a little bit scary for these Nugu girl groups debuting too. Even in the recent years, we've been able to see a few Nugu girl groups shoot into the mainstream, but with the oversaturation of the girl group market right now, it's looking really scary for those that lack public recognition, or at least a big company to carry them to that. I know I talked about how girl groups are able to build fandoms to support them nowadays, but that doesn't really apply to these Nugu company girl groups. Most boy groups are able to build at least a small fandom to support them in physical sales, and it's much harder for girl groups to do this. The only two that I can think of that have done this are Dreamcatcher and Loona. Going back to one of my older points, the oversaturation of the K-pop market is really pushing the ones who aren't having their breakout moments or a strong fandom to support them out of the industry entirely. And while the increased competition will create a lot of interesting and entertaining fights on Twitter, the reality is it's going to create a lot of sad endings for a lot of idols who just want to achieve their dreams. And that concludes this video. Once again, sort of an unscripted podcast thing from me. This was sort of a last minute topic idea from me. I'm making this video the day before it goes up, and I just had to think of something to talk about. Let me know what you thought. It was definitely a lot more laid back and chill than most of my videos, and did you enjoy the vibe? Let me know. As I said, I am looking forward to all of the chaos that's going to happen next year, but I'm also really sad because a lot of these groups are just going to fall into Nugudom and they won't be able to escape. And for me, standing MCND, who is a group that is sort of teetering in the middle of those, it's scary. So, yeah, support them if you can. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate every single person who watches my videos. And if you enjoyed, consider liking or even subscribing. I upload a video sort of similar to this, sort of podcast video essay-esque thing every Saturday. And then in the middle of the week, I do a typical KTube video, like unpopular opinions, my favorite songs, my least favorite songs, you know, stuff like that. Thank you again so much for watching, and without further ado, see you next time.